Welcome students, welcome to another video session from Bioremedial online classes. I am Santosh. I welcome you to this session. In this session, we will discuss about one of the new chapter, that is how do organisms reproduce. We all know what reproduction is all about. From the early days we have been studying reproduction is a process of producing or generating the similar kind of organisms. Living organisms produce their own kind. In this chapter we will discuss how various organisms produce their young ones and how they produce and why they produce. Students, before going to the details, we will understand the living organisms and their reproduction process. Before that, why do they reproduce? If you can ask a question, simple question. If there will be no reproduction, what will happen? Imagine the reproduction process will not be there for the rest of the time. What will happen? The entire earth will be without life over a long period of time, because no new organism will be formed. So the existing organism will be definitely one day they will die and there will be no life on the earth. So this is a beautiful process in which living organisms continue to exist in the nature. So what a beautiful process it is. Let us look at how they reproduce. We know there are various types of organisms in the earth, starting from unicellular amoeba to multicellular big elephants. So we will know how various types of organisms reproduce in various processes. Firstly, look at the definition of reproduction. So we can define reproduction is a simple definition, that the process in which living organisms produce, or we can say create, their own kind. Cell means human being can produce baby, cow can produce calves, dog can produce puppy. Likewise, cow cannot produce puppy. Okay, likewise. So this is the process. Now, what is the advantage of this process? In this process, the older organisms of a generation of a species are replaced by newer. We know, suppose organisms they take birth, then gradually grow, they become adult, they become old, then finally they die. Every living organism has a lifespan from birth to death. This period of life is called lifespan. So after the death, when the old organism will die, the new organism will take their place. In this process, the older organisms are replaced by new organisms. You can write down one more point. Older organisms are replaced by new organisms, new ones. Another important process, in this process, very exactly similar types of living organisms are produced. The exact copy of a particular species is produced in this process. We will learn how the exact character transferred from parent to offspring, how the offsprings of children are very similar to their parents in very next chapter when we will study heredity and evolution. Now we should just understand that living organisms, they can produce their own species or own type. Okay, this is the overall definition we can talk about. So apart from the definition point, we can discuss about the various types of reproduction. If you can consider the various process or various types, reproduction is broadly classified into two groups. We can say reproduction can be asexual or reproduction can be sexual. So we can understand what asexual is, what sexual is. Asexual reproduction. In this asexual, no sex is involved, no sex cell, no gametes are involved. This implies. But we can define asexual reproduction in this way that living organisms reproduce by a single parent. Means if the reproduction takes place by single parent without involvement of gamete, we can define in this way living organisms can, I can differentiate asexual and sexual in this way that single parent is involved. Single parent involved, we can say single parent reproduce without involvement of gametes. The same definition we can write out in sexual reproduction, but in different way that gametes are involved. In sexual reproduction, instead of single parent, here two parents share their gametes to produce their offspring. Here difference, if you can differentiate, we can write down in very short way. Otherwise you can write down in details. Asexual reproduction is a process in which the reproduction takes place from a single parent without involvement of gametes. Okay. And in sexual reproduction, two parents of opposite sex of same species, when they combine, they share their reproductive unit, reproductive cell or gametes and produce their offspring. That process is called sexual reproduction. Now the second difference point I can differentiate. The second difference point is it produces exact copy of parents. Exact copy. Here produce variation. What is the reason of producing exact copy in case of asexual reproduction, and there is a variation takes place in case of sexual reproduction? In asexual reproduction, what happens when a single parent produce there are various way of reproducing. Asexual reproduction is a various way, but in all these way, all the various types of asexual reproduction, the DNA, the genetic material from the parent is transferred to offspring totally. Complete genetic material is transferred from parent to offspring. Actually, genetic materials are the materials which are present inside the nucleus in form of DNA, which we know, and the DNA, and the part of the DNA are called genes, which represents the characters. All our characters actually present inside the DNA. If the entire DNA will pass from father to their children, parent to children, the children obviously will be the same exact copy. But in case of sexual reproduction, two different individuals, they will share their gamete. Means two different genome, two different genetic material are combined to become a single. That is why when it is a mixture of genetic material, there is a chance of variation, the chance of development of some extra or different character from parents in the offspring. So offsprings are produced with some different characters, with some variation, along with the parent characters. Parent characters they also bring, but some variation. Actually, this is the region, over a long generation, over a long period of time, these variation accumulate and they produce new species. In this nature, the entire biodiversity is due to the variation, accumulation of variation, and due to the sexual reproduction. Okay, that is why we all have evolved from bacteria. What the science says, what the chemical